looks like once again, we don't have somebody waiting to join us, but so welcome. We have a guest tonight who may be interested in joining us as an alternate. And Brenda Carolina. So Carolina, do you want to introduce?
Yes, Diane has retired, what, 3 years ago now?
3 years ago from middle school math in Summersworth.
Oh, well, why don't you actually say a little bit about yourself?
I'm Diane Madariaga, and I actually moved to Barrington 40 years ago this week. So we've been in Barrington for the past 40 years. And like I said, I taught middle school math over at Summersworth for 37, turned out to be 37 years. And then I have 2 daughters that are all grown up, and they live in Melrose, Mass, and Elliott, Maine, so close by. So I'm fortunate.
How long have you been retired?
3 years.
3 years. So you're
2021
to do.
Well, I have a lot to do, but I've always been a library fan ever since I was a kid. So
Well, welcome.
Carolina keeps catching me on the street.
Well, 2 years ago, she couldn't because she was doing grandchild care,
Yeah.
but they're in school now.
Well, you may find, I think this is a good meeting to come to because this is a packed agenda.
Yes, I read through I saw the agenda. I didn't read through it.
Yeah, and so you get a flavor for a lot of things that we do.
Great.
So with that, we're online, right? Liz,
Yes, we're
online. Although I don't see anybody up there, but is there anybody here who wants to make any comment during public comment? Not that you can't speak during the rest of the meeting? I guess it would be nice if we went around and everybody introduced ourselves.
Yeah.
It was a one-way street there. Well, I'm Susan Guardiello, and I'm the chair of the library. Trustees. Who are you?
I'm Carolina. We taught at a different school in Somersworth.
Right. That's how we first met.
I'm Melanie Haley, and I'm the treasurer.
I'm Ezra Hodgson. Been in Barrington, I think, almost 7 years, and New Hampshire for a little bit longer than that. I'm a local realtor, and I'm a trustee. I'm your name, and I'm Susan.
Susan Frankel, and I'm a trustee, and I've been on the board for 7 years.
And I'm Liz Bolton, I'm the library director, and I will just note that there was an event for volunteers.
So Lydia Cook, and I'm also a retired teacher, just retired. And I'm vice chair of the trustees.
And Lydia and other people here are also on the Friends of the Library group. And Lydia was the chair of that for a lot of years. So
I'm also Bloom.
And I guess I'm just going to mention this up front because I'll forget it. I can forward this out to you all. As you may recall, the last few years, the town has done sort of an employee event, like a picnic kind of thing, and they would do apple picking at Demerit Farms over in Lee, I think it is. So this year they're doing apple picking again, but apparently Demerit is not doing pick your own this year. So it's going to be at Butternut Farm, my favorite pick your own place. It's going to be on October 13th. And they asked that and it's for all volunteers as well as staff of the town. So, and it was a lot of fun. I went last year. Did you go?
I went last week.
A number of the library staff went, and you're welcome to bring your family. So they just asked that you email in advance. So when I forward this, I can forward this to you because I also just got it electronically, and I can forward it to you after, and then you'll have a live link to Amy to register.
That looks fun.
So if you want to just pass that around and people can see. It was very nice. It was fun last year. So that's that. Public meeting. Okay, the minutes of August 20. Carolina wrote the minutes. I did some edits. And then we had some difficulty about Carolina being able to get back into the document. I don't know what's going on with that, but I emailed you just last night. I'm going to say final edited version. More edits are always welcome. Did everybody have a chance to look at those? Are there any edits or comments on those? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 20th.
I'll make the motion to accept the minutes of August 20th.
I'll second. Okay.
Susan seconded, we're past nine.
Was it?
But you'll have your chance, because this is Susan's last meeting, unless you change your mind, this is the only study. So it's been moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next item is accepting donations. By law, the library trustees must accept all donations, so we always have that as an agenda item. And the dollar amount was arousing $49, as opposed to last month, where it was $4,000 something dollars. Is there a motion to accept the donations in the amount of $49? Ezra, here's your.
Make a motion. $49 donation.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And by the way, Richard, you're voting tonight because Robert's not here,
Okay.
so you can play Robert. All in favor?
Richard.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's accepted. Treasurer's report. Melanie.
All right. On my trustees report that went out the other day, there was an error on it. Under the TD Bank General Operations interest, I had neglected to put in the $2.42 of interest that we earned in August. So I'm telling you that I have fixed it on my report, but I wanted to mention in case anyone noticed that that had a zero, and it shouldn't have a zero. So across our interest-bearing accounts with the $2.42, in addition to the 9 cents in the savings, we racked in $2.51 in interest in the month of August. And as we discussed at the last meeting, we had some action items for a couple of our CDs, and I was able to successfully take care of both of those, getting them locked in rates that we had discussed for the terms that we had discussed. So our current balance across all three of the CDs is currently at $63,000, $63,000, 693.38.
Very good.
And that's it.
And we're given information that we don't need to actually accept the treasurer's report by vote. If you want, we can, but remember Robert said by Robert's rules, that's not required. What's your wish? Well, then make a motion.
As amended.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Opposed? You can do it the other way when Robert comes in. He wants something, but I agree. I think that is a good thing. I did not hear from Dannon, so I don't know why he's not here. And Dannon, we have a select board liaison, a member of the select board. All the select board members are liaisons to different groups or organizations in town, and Dannon is ours. And he's both a good, loyal library user and supporter, but he's also been very helpful in our communications with the select board. So there. Liz sent us out a director's report. And I figured everybody read the report, so it's probably pretty self-explanatory, but I thought, Liz, it would be good for you to sort of recap that since the board last reviewed the draft budget, we had to make a number of changes.
We had to make a number of changes and I forgot to bring the budget. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Now I have
Did everybody copy out and bring them a copy of the draft MOU? Okay, when you get to, this is an opportunity to run and make a copy if we didn't have it.
I don't have a copy.
We have an extra over here.
I don't have the printers.
We have an extra over here.
Oh, there's an extra there.
That's
Right, thank you for bringing an extra. The other thing while Liz is getting it is Susan had announced that she was going to be retired from the board effective this month. And you alerted the town clerk to that?
I did.
Okay. And one option Susan has is to bail off into the sunset and come to meetings as a member of the public when she wants to. You could also choose to step back and become an alternate. Have you thought about that?
Not thoroughly, but that's good to know.
Well, and that's what Karen, Town did. Karen, by the way, had said she wouldn't be at this meeting. Can't remember, out of town or something like that. So, and just so you know, we can have, by law, we can have 3 alternates. The alternates were appointed by the select board, generally is on recommendation of the trustee board. So, so we right now have 2 alternates, which is Richard and Karen. And as long as we're on that topic, while Liz is going through her papers, under new business, I had trustee vacancy recommendation for the select board. So our options are to determine who would like to recommend. We often recommend a current alternate because they've already been oriented to the board, and unless we hate them, think they're losers. So how do people feel about recommending Richard for an appointment as a full trustee instead of an alternate? What'd you say? Go closer.
In favor of it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, let's have a motion then to recommend Richard for a position or to replace Susan on the board, and to make that recommendation to the select board.
I'll motion to have Richard as a trustee.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Richard, if you want to make a stump speech, you can. I don't think that's right. Okay.
Could I please ask people to speak up because the fan is loud and
Yeah.
my sinuses are full, so.
Yeah, so all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I will send an email to
Yeah.
Connor.
Oh, okay. And Kim.
Yeah, I'm not sure at what point. I'll take care of that appropriately.
Okay.
When I did speak to Connor about the potential of Richard being nominated, and he reminded me of their process. I reminded him that the board just saw your volunteer application form, and he did not feel you needed to do another application. And so hopefully that will just go through in one meeting. But if not, even if it takes them 2 months to go through with it, you'll just be voting in place of Susan as, you know, when we're short a trustee and alternate votes, you'll just be that voter. So now we're back to the budget, Liz.
Okay, the last meeting, I believe, when I handed out my draft budget, it looked like we were at like about a 5% increase overall for next year. After stopping and talking with Jim Anderson and talking about, well, you're gonna need a generator contract, you're gonna need fire extinguisher servicing, you're gonna need pest control management, your utilities costs don't look like they're enough for me. I ended up, under contracts, I added about almost $10,000 to the total, which is a 92.5% increase on contracts. I know it sounds terrible, but this is all to cover the cost of the potential new library. Stuff that's covered here in this town building is not necessarily covered over there. So that was a large increase that I put in. Additionally, I think communications, I put in $999 to that because Jim thought my $800 estimate was probably a bit too low. So that's a 999% increase on our previous $1. Again, it's another thing that's been covered in this building under the town's general building lines that was now pushed back onto us. What else did we add on to? Digital materials was up anyways, but I think the biggest one was that contracts, because we hadn't even thought about it. And then we go and talk to Jim and he's like, you're gonna need this, you're gonna need this, you're gonna need this, you're gonna need this. And it was like, okay, oh yes, as well as the library building improvements and maintenance line, which I've had low, but we're gonna have to have initial garden maintenance after they trample all over our gardens during the construction process. we're gonna have to pick up 6 months of trash removal here. And then another 6 months over there. We won't be splitting the cost over there like we are here, so that's necessarily gonna go up, it's gonna double. And that's where the electricity cost came in for the new library. Jim said I should put it in at least at $10,000
And for what?
for the utilities, electricity.
For the whole thing.
For the
right,
whole
right.
thing, yes. For that. No, so that actually blew that whole line. That was an additional $12,280 under that budget line, which is an up of 491%. I know it sounds terrible, but we didn't have huge line numbers, so the smaller the number, the more you add to it, the worse it looks. It's not like I've got $1 million budget and it's gone up by 491%. Only had,
2,000 in at about 4, and that's about 14,000.
yes. Yeah, so our total 2024 budget is going to be $474,236. The 2023 one was 433,909, which is a $40,000 difference, because I did add all those contractual issues that will necessarily go with the new building. That's a 9.2% increase over last year. According to Jim, we don't know, we're just sort of working with numbers at this point in time. I don't know if that's really going to cost that much or not. And additionally, since I handed this in on the due date, which was September 9th, I've since had a staff member inform me that they're going to want to go on the town's budget, on the town's health insurance, which is going to up my budget in that area. And Piper Webb's, who they're going out of business next year. Yes.
That's news.
I'm glad that they told me after I got my budget in, but the people who take care of our whole web servicing and we do our content, but they take care of the domain name.
Are they planning to sell the business or?
What Dale told me was he had been training another couple to take over the business when he retired. Now, due to issues in their life beyond their control, they are not going to be able to take this over for him. So he's going to take care of it through next October.
Wouldn't it go through?
I know. Through next October, and then we are on our own. He's trying to get a list of potential people we could go with. But it's gonna cost a lot more, is what he told me, because most people do not work with libraries. Anybody who works with libraries know that we're running it on a shoestring. Other companies, so
It's been very cheap.
it has
And I
been.
looked at some other library websites for other reasons, and I think this doesn't look like a Piper Web, so I'm
Yes.
sure your colleagues will be able to. put it
Oh,
in.
yes, somebody already went out on the that next day, somebody went out on the listserv and was like, no, does anybody working? So I said to them, when you get your information, can you forward it on to me? Because we're in the same boat.
At least we can still amend the budget, but this is. Yeah,
Yeah, so those were, I can't tell people, no, you can't have a personal life change because I got my budget in, and you can't get out of the web business because I got my budget in, but things like that keep happening.
and Liz and I had a lengthy meeting with Connor, like almost 2 hours, I think.
Yes.
And it was about the MOU, but I also raised a couple of budget questions. And based on what I was seeing from some other libraries with freestanding buildings, I suggested that some of these expenses be covered under the town's contracts and in their budget. They can split it out in order to be able to show people how much goes to the library, how much goes to rec, whatever. And we know from Jim Anderson that he tracks it that way. He tracks all his expenses on each facility, so it's available. And it would seem to me logical for pest control, generator maintenance, fire extinguisher maintenance, things like that, to be done centrally and not included in our budget. Connor disagreed with that.
Yes.
He thinks it's most transparent to be able to have it all separately in our budget. And I did ask, well, are you going to do that for the rec? Because they're going to have this whole building. And the answer was no. They track it separately, but no, it didn't need, and it felt quite honestly like we're just painting a target on our back for being this expensive issue. But I was not successful in persuading him. He said it's available. They can, they can do it spread out, but he did not want to have it a separate budget, their separate budget. Clearly I don't agree with his perspective on that, but I was not able to persuade him. What we did get was we don't have to have separate contracts with each of those purveyors, because having a separate contract with the pest control people just for us would probably be more expensive than the town having one contract that covers all buildings, even if the vendor says how much time or cost was related to each building. So more to be worked out on those details, but that was a little disappointing. I also made the pitch that our utility cost be included in the town utility costs. Again, it can be broken out, but I always say I'm worried about years ago when there was that huge spike in fuel costs. And I heard stories, I was on the NHLTA board at the time, I heard stories from some other libraries who were discontinuing buying books because it was in their budget and the town didn't bail them out, they had to cover it. And whether they covered it by obviously cutting back services in order to be able to cover that bill because they didn't have other funds. I was not successful in making that argument to Connor. He was really quite adamant that those be included in our budget. So there we are. I'm very worried that when this all comes to light, people are going to say, you told us you weren't adding staff and that it was going to be utilities, and that was the main additional cost. At least at this point, as I understand it, we are not including snow removal because the public works is going to cover that in their budget. Lawn maintenance, mowing, they're covering it in the town managing that. So that's not being somehow separated out and charged to us. And our use of Jim Anderson as the facilities manager, because he's going to be our go-to guy to manage a lot of this. They're not going to be separating out like 20% of his wage and putting it in our budget. So I guess there's some reasonable accommodation, but I guess I wouldn't feel quite so bad if they didn't take the same approach with the rec department, even though it's a town department, but it would feel a little more even-handed to me.
Can you explain why that was? Why the rec?
Because it's a town department, it's under the overall town, whereas they don't have statutory authority. Like their commission is responsible only for the revolving fund. And the spending of the revolving fund is not responsible for everything else. But I would still say, as a voter, when I look at their budget, I see the town is covering 3 positions, and that's it. Everything else is coming out of the revolving fund. That's not really true, particularly when they have the whole building. It's understandable that they didn't break out these building costs because they really couldn't break out how much is our use of heat, how much is theirs, because it's one heating system. Anyway, I just want you to know that we in our discussions yesterday, I did most of the talking. I was gonna say, we made it, but we weren't successful in that, but we'll get to other discussion. So that's any questions for Liz or on the budget? No,
That's good.
but I think we're going to be submitting yet another.
We probably will, because Hampshire downloadable books is now in the middle of voting, and everybody voted for a higher amount than I had in my budget.
So we may not be
Another
able.
$300.
And we had, remember, voted to add $1,000 for a, what did you call that count?
Advantage account.
An advantage account, so our members wouldn't have to, our patrons wouldn't have to wait so long. We may have to forfeit that.
Or another, maybe ask the friends or.
At some point, Hoopla is not getting it any cheaper either. It's all this digital content. It's just,
Well, that's such a demand for that, to
Yeah.
not increase those the budget for those items, and and the cost of books doesn't go down.
Oh my
So if we
gosh.
keep that flat, it's like taking a cut
It is.
in the book account. So there you go. It's going to be an interesting budget season. So that's that. New business. Okay, we're up to that MOU. You all want to get out your MOU. What Liz and I did was we collected MOUs, memorandum of understanding between libraries and their town government
Mhm.
from maybe a dozen.
Yeah.
communities gave us their stuff,
8
ranging
to, 8
from,
to 12, I think.
yeah, ranging from very sort of simple or appearing on the surface to be simple one pagers to very detailed ones. I drafted up two, and Liz and I talked about which was the best to work from. So basically, the draft that I produced and sent to Connor was based on the one that exists in Wolfboro. It was fairly recently renegotiated with their town, so the format is pretty much just like that. And my goal, as I drafted it and made edits to what we gave them, was to try and keep things pretty much like they are here. So that we would use the personnel offices, we would use them for payroll, things like that. When Liz and I met with Connor yesterday, he wanted to make a number of changes in that, which was fine because we're in negotiation. There were a couple of areas that he felt pretty strongly about. And one of them had his general feeling was if we want to use some town services, and they're very happy to continue to do the financial management of the town funds, that is to say, pay the bills. I'd say work as
Yeah,
our bookkeeper and that.
We sign off on them and send them over in a certain format and make sure they get there in a timely manner. They will pay them.
Yeah. So he wanted to have a little more clarity on that part of it, like to also say that we would use forms prescribed by them or their procedures, all reasonable stuff. On personnel, he really has a strong feeling that if we want to use their human resources, I'm going to say department is one person, but that we should use the town's personnel policies, and that we should what he wrote in this first section in the draft MOU was way more than we talked about. But he did feel, I had noted in my draft that we would use the wage scale as we have. But basically, it was that we reserve the right to place our staff on scale where we feel they belong. He doesn't agree that that's a good thing. He feels that we could recommend to the select board if we feel it should be moved to a different grade. But we shouldn't have the authority to make that change separately. And my quick response was, I said, this is just me, not the trustees. I do not feel comfortable relinquishing our statutory authority to the select board. He really felt that we should delegate that authority to the select board. You know, we have a good select board, we have a good trustee board, we're working well together. This is the time to make these, negotiate these things. And I said, but yes, but we won't always have these good boards. So I said, we'll talk about this today. So if we want to get out your form here, and I hate to say take it from the top, I think it's going to be useful for us to actually look through this, and I want your discussion on this. Ezra.
So currently, we're not utilizing the town's human resource services.
Yes, we are.
We are.
Yes, we are. And Liz can describe how that works. They have a human resource. I don't know what Debbie's title is.
She's the Human Resources Administrator.
Okay.
Um,
And so with the new building, that has to go to.
It has nothing to do with the building.
Okay.
That part, whether we moved or
That
not,
doesn't
it's
matter.
using that.
Okay.
And just for other people who may not be up to speed on this, which might be you, Ezra, and Richard, the town had not updated personnel policies, I guess, in years. And so they formed a committee. They invited us to serve to participate in that committee. And Susan is nodding. Susan and Liz went to a number of meetings. Did it start even before Liz? I don't remember.
It did.
It did. It's, yeah.
Okay. And,
We went through the whole, Connor had wanted us to have everything done by trying to remember when our last meeting was it last December? We had in 2023, we were supposed to have everything done by like September of 2023, and we kept having meetings and meetings and meetings, and so we did all this work on this, and there's still tweaking to be done, and I guess there's gonna be some more meetings. We thought we had to have it all together so that it could be brought before the select board and they could say yay or nay to any of the changes. So the new personnel policy manual is still not done. So I don't know what to say about that.
what Connor said was, and, I don't want to, it's not unreasonable what he is saying, that if you're going to have one person administering personnel policies for the entire town and for the library, it's not reasonable to expect that one person to be administering two entirely different policies. And so, in other words, we could have something that looks black and white in the town, and it would be difficult for that person. But we've never done that. We have basically tried to mirror town policies.
And we do. I went through our personnel policy I had them both out last night, and I was going through, we mirror the language, except for it's library and trustees versus town and, town administrator or select board. There's slight, and I printed out the RSAs because I was curious about, the whole thing is like, except in those cities where other provision has been made by general or special act of the legislature, the library trustees of every public library in the state shall, and then it goes on to say what duties are here. And we have, I know like Nashua, Manchester, they're big cities, they have a city council, things are slightly different, but we are still have a board of trustees, and they're the ones who are supposed to oversee all facets of library operations, including hiring, firing, human resources, and the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. And so,
And
so we necessarily have our own policy manual with tweaks in smaller areas.
right, and I would say at least 85%.
Oh, it's exactly the same verbiage.
Exactly the same. We're gonna,
I said, we don't want to give employees like a 80-page document of which most of it doesn't relate to them.
Right.
And he had no problem with that. You could just do the excerpts for use of our staff, the parts that do relate. And in the larger full document, he said, we do this for police and rescue and so on, and rec. There are exceptions, like whatever, better than I, because you're on that committee, but whatever the policy is, and then there would be for police, which is also unionized, they have unionized employees as well. Or for the library, we would have a proviso at the beginning of the policies that says, in the case of the library.
We tried that at the beginning,
Yes.
I think just right when you were coming on board, we were trying to set it up that way, and there were just enough tweaks that it was going to lengthen the document.
Yes, it sounds easy to do on paper, except if you have to put in the RSA into the whole thing saying what the trustees have province over, that was making it, and there's just differences here because we're under a different governing board.
And it's small, but yet it's meaningful.
Yes.
And one of them, for an example, are holidays and compensation for holidays. The town hall is not open on Fridays, they're not open on Saturdays, and we have a whole different policy if there's a holiday that floats, that falls on a Friday and a Monday, how to deal with the folks that work on Saturdays. So we have a policy, it works for us, but to try to put that into have that in. So that's just one example, and there aren't that many more.
No,
But, and our policy right now is, because a decade ago, more than a decade ago, when I was on the board before, we changed our holiday policy so that people who were never assigned to work on
Right.
Mondays got
Right,
20% of their time. If they worked
Right.
20 hours a week, they got 5 days holiday pay and just took 5 hours off during the week. That's not the way the town works.
right.
And I think, Liz, you were saying,
that's,
you
yeah,
can go and buy with the town.
I'm going by what the town, because I do have an employee who does not come in on Mondays ever. And she's good with that.
But maybe because she was hired. in that,
Because she was
has
hired in that,
policy.
so she, yeah, and it makes for issues, you know.
We
Also have an employee who
that-
works one day on Mondays. Do I want to give you 9 hours?
And now that's what she would have. If she worked a full day on Monday and half a day on Wednesday, she gets a huge amount of vacation. I remember we had a prior employee who had a big issue around this holiday stuff. You know who I'm talking about. And, man, it was basically tears involved and trying to accommodate that employee within the town policies.
But I'm doing most of this myself. I'm not, you know, it's a struggle for me to come up with the schedule and make it fair for everybody. And then I just report it over there that this is, you know, it takes place below the surface, that I don't think I need other people involved with it.
We did have some other issues around earn time. That has been another
That's a chronic problem.
chronic problem. People who work, 20 hours or more a week are eligible for earned time.
Based on the hours that they're scheduled for, not the hours worked, the hours they are scheduled for.
And when
I
we
know
had-
it's not intuitive.
And it was a problem for us. And if your schedule is regular and you work your regular hours, fine. But we had, I keep looking at Susan because before Liz came on, we had 6 months with extremely short staff, and we were asking staff that were scheduled to work 25 hours a week if they could work 29 hours a week. And so, you know, that sort of thing. They were working way more hours. They were only getting credit on earned time, not for the hours they worked. Even if they worked those longer hours for 4 months, they were getting them based on the original 20 hours that they were scheduled. And that raised some questions. And the initial response from the HR person was her system was not able to do that. She would have to hand calculate everything. Then apparently she talked to the computer system people and they could adjust it so that it would be based on hours worked. But it has not been, that change has not
That
been.
change has not been made. And the way I've dealt with it, I've had some people when they were starting, I've just had to hand in and make a change of hours. Like somebody, the first week they only worked 11 hours. So I had to hand in a first thing saying they're only working 11 hours. And then I have to type up another one for the next week saying now they're working 29 hours. It's a lot more work on my end, I would say that. And I don't mind doing it to make it work for everybody. But that's how we've dealt with it, because I do get a lot of questions of why isn't it, it'd be a lot easier for me if they were just getting their earned time based on the number of hours they come in to work.
And they do a weekly timesheet. And that, you know, I was on the VNA board for years, and of course, what's the problem? It works. But anyway, so that's still an issue. And this would require that we defer to whatever it is the town decides is the appropriate policy.
I mean, I don't mind you, I mean, you know, and I reached out to some other libraries to say, what do you do with this? Some places are have the town do their retirement system, but they're doing the payroll and the leave and stuff like that. And some people had the town attorney look at it who said, no, you actually have, if you're having your own personnel policy manual, you've got your own board,
I'm not
That
sure
can
we
be
can
questioned.
waive our statutory authority.
you can't.
It's not law, it's law.
Can we see our regulatory authority?
And I can,
How do we get it back if we want it?
You don't.
Right.
I know, what was, I've been so stressed out.
I'm sorry, yeah, that was not
It's
bad.
just been, because we did this this morning, Connor got this to us at the end of the day yesterday. Obviously, I sent it to you folks. And I'm gonna be honest, I haven't read the whole thing through, but I thought it was not gonna be quite this. What is written in that first section, that will provide human resource services. The library will use the town's personnel policies, may annually request in January changes to the policy manual as needed. So and I'm not sure what that means. Changes in the policy, like every department can request a change, I suppose, but what if it's only for us? I don't know. But we're requesting it, and then the select board makes the decisions.
You know, January is pretty packed month anyhow, because you have to do all the town.
But even apart from January, the town will send any proposed changes to us before being adopted by the select board. I suppose that allows us then to make comments back, but if they would be the ultimate decision maker. The library trustees may, for good cause, grant policy exceptions and notify the human resource administrator. So I suppose that's maybe some of the things that Liz is talking about.
Yes.
As far as scheduling.
Who defines, sorry, sound like hell.
Yeah.
Who defines good cause? Is that us? Is that the select board? You know, it's like
That's a good
delivering a
question.
home in broom clean condition. There's a lot of gray area there, you know,
They may feel that something is not sufficiently good cause that we feel.
it's very important.
And then the last part, which I hadn't been before, human resource administrator will be involved in all employment actions in the library, including hiring, firing, discipline, to ensure compliance with policy manual and employment law. Talk about deferring. That person should not be involved in hiring and firing. By law, they can't be really. Only the trustees can terminate, even
Yeah,
can't on her own,
Yeah, I can't.
pick somebody out.
No, I have to talk to you guys if there's a real serious problem, which I try not to get into. But yeah, I mean, it says it in the RSA's. I can't. Yeah, I don't, everybody said, I asked this question out on the listserv, do you use your town's policy manual? Do you have your own? Do you go through HR to do all, do you allow that? And everybody said, don't cede your power. You don't give away your ability to do this to do this for the area that you are governing.
I'm just looking at the emails that just provided. And people are saying, we generally use the town policy, or that they have a policy manual that if it's not covered in the manual, it defers to the town policy.
Yes.
Another one was, we use the town manual, we follow it with a few notable exceptions, but the stumbling block you highlight, that you or your board could, quote, request changes annually, that would have to go through the select board, would be a deal breaker for my board. Yeah. So, hey guys.
Where does it go from where? So like we've got a draft here. This was put together by Connor.
Right, we would need to review all the sections and say what we either agree to
Yeah.
or what we cannot agree to.
Yeah.
I had the impression, and Liz, you can share your impression. The way Connor was talking, and he said, this is his review and recommendation. It hasn't gone to the select board yet. And I asked him if he had reviewed any of it with any select board members, and he had not. But I had the impression that agree with this personnel section,
Those sounded like the deal breaker.
that we would need to take on our own human resource management. They would not do it. They could do payroll, but they would not handle the human resource aspect of it.
Even as they're handling it now.
Even as they're handling it now. And there have been ups and downs with how they're handling it. Sometimes I know Liz has said they've been very helpful with some of the special situations we've had in recent.
Because she's the human resources and she has that background. I've dealt with a lot of different situations, but I don't have the education. I know what not to do.
A number of people over time on short-term disability.
FMLA, yeah, those are ones, it's much better to have them deal with somebody who knows the law. Pitch perfect, and can go over it and knows where to go with it. I, prefer not to have to, yeah.
Yeah, we're really not staffed for that. It would be easy for us to make errors without knowing that, but it didn't, to me, it didn't, I think we go back and say, this is what we can agree to, this is what we can't agree to.
Yeah,
If they want to have a 70-page personnel policy in order to incorporate what we would have done as our alterations in the policy, like holiday pay, that sort of thing. Yes,
We're
Richard.
not using them as an advisory when there's a problem. In other words, put it in the document or the understanding that when there's a problem, you'll go to the professional, which would be the human resources person for the town.
I'm not sure because it seemed the idea I was getting was this was an all or not, either we go with everything or we don't.
Not the entire agreement, but just on
Yeah, because
personnel.
those are the first two things that were brought up. And I know,
Well,
yeah.
it doesn't feel, yes, we could get advice to say, okay, we have this FMLA. Can you share with me what the FMLA goals are? What would I need to do? That would still leave Liz, unless we hire somebody else, which we don't have money to do. That Liz would still be serving as the HR manager. The next section on payroll. The only concern I have the way that's written is the town reserves the right to make changes to the time and attendance program and pay schedule as necessary. And we had, as you know, the last couple of years, we've made a couple changes in where our staff positions are on the pay grade. And Connor wasn't crazy about that happened. But he understood that we have that authority but they would prefer that we not make those changes. I think one time he said he's only had like 3 changes in that over the past years, and they've all been from the library. Other department heads may have gone to him and say, I want to change what this position is in, and he has denied it, saying we go by the schedule. They use an outside consultant to look at other towns. And he reminded us that this is before Liz, that when they went out and did that survey in 22, they invited us and other towns that we thought they should have for library data. And Melissa was there at the time, and she gave them another number of other towns, and they came back with the conclusion they came back with. We ended up making a change when we hired Liz. We changed, actually before Liz, but when they came out with that, we changed what grade the library director was in, and we changed what grade the library assistants / desk clerks were in. Remember, that was in grade 1, we moved it to grade 2. We started to make more changes, but we backed off from that when Connor said, you can leave it in the grade. You can just pick what step in that grade you want to hire somebody out based on experience or whatever. And so we've gone that route since then, pretty much. Unless their consultant recommended a change in the grade for a position, which they did on 1 or 2 positions. But the way this is written, seems to me the town, not the trustees, would have the sole authority to make those kinds of changes. And that, we had some discussion with Connor about that.
Yeah, we're trying not, we did put the social media, the digital services assistant up.
Yeah.
That's more technical. That was at 5. It's up at the same level. Yeah, the ILL person is at 4 and the clerks are now at 2. And I think we're okay there. Our main sticking point is only I don't know if these people really worry so much about their grade or all that, as much as we were just trying to get them up to what Wendy's was offering for people flipping burgers and stuff like that, in order to push them up. Yeah, market basket.
Well,
So I think at this point, we're okay. If anybody leaves and I do have to hire somebody else, I may have to hop up further up the scale to fill the position, but
Well,
I wasn't gonna up their grade level or anything of that
it's
nature.
really in that next session, the town will maintain wage and benefits
Mhm.
offerings, so under B, pay plan and classification. Um, And again, the library may request for select board consideration, position classification changes. So again, it goes back to, we can request a change, but it's gonna be up to, I just don't. I don't know. And I know I'm talking a lot and I wanted to hear from you, but I'm just blathering on.
You just lose your autonomy, you know, it's just, only like, it was select board at that time, and that's not great, you know, I mean, you're right, we have a great select board right now, we might not in 5 years.
Is there a timeline on making these changes? Like, do we need to agree to this by a certain time?
Well, we don't have to agree to this because we can operate without an MOU,
Mhm.
basically, because if we don't sign it, it's not in effect. Both parties have to sign it. The intent originally from the select board was that they wanted us to renegotiate the MOU prior to this budget session.
Mhm.
And originally on their goals, it was, they were instructing Connor, try to work this out over the summer so that that he could bring to them a MOU that we were comfortable with at the September meeting. I informed him that that wasn't gonna happen because we were up to our eyeballs and working on the budget, so we could maybe aim for October. But there's no extreme deadline, quite honestly, go longer than that, and we come to an agreement. Obviously, the risk is always, they may at some point say, if we can't come to agreement on that, we're not gonna do your payroll, or we're gonna do this or that, but that's always the walk away option.
I just feel like the timing right now to try and dive into something like this is not ideal because we have so many other things that we're trying to accomplish with the building. I think that we're going to probably have to, on some of these ones that we're not feeling great about, we're probably going to have to maybe do like a subcommittee or something, try and work on some rewording. That's gonna be a process. That's not something we can just come up with tonight.
It makes a lot of sense. I think
Yeah.
it is gonna be something to think through.
And since I only sent it to you last night,
It's, you know,
Yeah.
now the change over to the new building is the biggest priority,
Yeah.
And as it should be.
as it should be.
And this is budget time, really. It's where, you know, every department's going in front of the board. There's a lot going on.
and these things that we're talking about right now don't really affect the budget
No,
unless they said we won't do your payroll anymore, in which case we need to funk around for somebody to do payroll. But, and with, as you know, there are a lot of, which, well, I was gonna say small towns, but it may be true of larger towns where the town doesn't operate as the bookkeeper for the library. They, either the library handles all the money. Their MOU with the town is that the town will cut a check 4 times a year for 25% of the appropriation. And that's it. That's all the town has to do with it. And many towns go that route, perhaps to avoid some of these challenges. It's worked well for us for decades to let the town finance director do that bookkeeping task. So anyway, I think you're right, Melanie. I think we need more time. I think you suggested, I'm gonna ask you to turn off that air conditioner list. I can't imagine what you're hearing out of it. I'm struggling with it. To have a subcommittee, like 3 trustees meet and review this and come back to the board with recommendations. Would you be willing to be on that subcommittee? Would you be willing to be on that subcommittee? You're retired now. And you're the vice chair.
Okay.
Anybody else want to be on that subcommittee? I would like not to be on the subcommittee because I feel like I'm up to here with the building stuff. But I'm happy to share with you my strong opinions if you have them.
I don't feel like I have the capacity to be on this.
You don't think you got the time right now to do it?
I'm sorry.
What do you think, Richard?
I would do it. I would do it.
Okay, I mean, obviously, having two people who are really familiar with the RSA is gonna be helpful. And maybe Liz can participate with the discussion on that. Do you think you'd be able to come back to our regular October board meeting with sort of an analysis and set of recommendations?
For October? Yes.
You're not going anywhere right now? Okay, I'm gonna ask Melanie or Lydia. I think I'll ask Lydia. Would you chair that committee and however you set up your meetings and? Okay, thank you so much. And I think the message to the rest of us is to read this through and email to Lydia any further comments or concerns we have. And if Liz comes up with any other commentary, this is useful stuff, Liz, you know, your messages from other libraries.
Yes.
At least you can give us a report. If you're not ready for a final, I think we need to not let this go for a couple months. We need to really keep moving on.
If we show, if we explain that we're doing what we can and making progress, and if there is a stalemate, it just, you know, if it goes another month, it goes another
Yeah.
month.
Well, and I'm certainly happy to let Connor know that this is how we're approaching this task, but I
Right.
want to be honest with him. There are serious concerns about his proposal relative to the personnel section because we do not feel comfortable in,
We have the regulations.
we have the RSA's
Yeah.
and the authority, and it's not just do we not want to lose that authority, it is a you shall, and we cannot,
Right, so,
we don't feel we're in a position to delegate authority on those things, much less what we want to.
but there are resources for the subcommittee to check out with NHLTA and the municipal association. So I think, you know, time being what time is,
And we may,
We're
want- we
making
may
all
need
the
to, if we need to
attempts,
get a
but-
legal opinion beyond NHMA, because NHMA is very helpful, but if they understand that the select board is on the other side of it, that's their primary
Right.
client.
so I just,
So we might need to retain an attorney at some point.
right, so I just want to be cautious. It's not hard and fast, be done in October, but there be
Progress.
progress.
Yeah,
and-
we've met, we've looked at it, we talked about it.
Right, and there's a lot to do, as you
Right.
said.
Exactly. And it's really hard to do a deep dive into this when we're trying to make decisions about the building and we're talking about budget stuff and we want to give it the attention it deserves.
Okay, thank you all. That is great. So that is the MOU. Because you're officially appointed subcommittee, and I may have us take a vote on appointing you as a subcommittee to work on this. When you do choose to meet, you'll need to let Liz know so we can post those meetings. And they would be open because you're not talking about individuals, you're talking about policy. Again, not that we have a flood of people who are going to want to hear you debate RSAs, but there you go. So we did the trustee vacancy. Okay, library building project. Before Liz and I met with Connor, I thought this was going to be zipping right through, but they have loads of time. So I'm going to give you some quick comments. And we'll see when we need to meet again or what we need to do. We've had indicated that we would try to meet on October 1st, a review of all the building matters. So final design and finishes, you've seen that. We brought that little picture over there in before. And what Liz has laid out over there is the actual samples of carpet for you. We're not gonna,
Yeah, they're all labeled by number and letter, so if you look at the picture and you want to see what the rugs are, that you can see where everything belongs.
and after the meeting, you can, if you want to spend a little time looking at that, and Liz and I would be happy to answer questions. I think it really is going to look nice. It has a nature is sort of the basis of the selections of colors and floor design. We talk about what do you call that?
Marmoleum?
Marmoleum River.
Yes.
Things like that. So I think it's gonna end up looking very nice. We're just in the middle of our trustee meeting. Are you thinking this is some other meeting? You're welcome to stay.
Do I look like I'm bewildered? Are you here for the Bloomers? Oh, tomorrow. Oh, okay. Tomorrow at 6:30. I'll listen.
So anyway, that's the final design and finishes. I think that's gone really well. We did receive the approval of the change of use permit from DOT. And Jim Anderson handled this for us, put in the application. Because we come out on Route 125, the state highway, the DOT requires approval if you're changing the use. It was changing from a medical office building to a library. We're not changing the entrance, we're not changing anything. So it seemed like it ought to be pretty straightforward, but I have to give Jim credit because they changed systems and forms but it all worked out. He just forwarded to me and gave me a copy the other day of the formal approval. So that piece of work is done. Bidding process for subcontractors. And you may have seen this if you looked at the website or saw it on Facebook. Following our meeting on September 5th with the building committee, the Bowen asked if they could have a open house for bidders at the building. So anybody who hadn't seen the building before wanted to come in and look at it before they completed their bid. And bids are due to Bowen, subcontractor bids, by the end of September. Bowen will be reviewing all those and making their decisions on what contracts. The most response they've had is from electricians. A lot of electricians bring. So that's a good news because I would think if a lot of electricians are interested, they'll be competitive. We'll see.
Is the furniture going out to bid?
That gets us into the purchasing. We did not go out to bid on furniture. So Bowen is doing all the construction, but there are things that are called owner responsibilities. So anyway, what will happen after that, the building committee is meeting on October 10th. At that date, the building committee will see, all the bids that have come in and who Bowen intends to use. So they're making the ultimate decision. We are not. That's advantageous because, quite honestly, if there were a local bidder who thought they wanted to get the bid and they didn't get it, we're not making that decision, the trustees. It is being made objectively by Bowen based on cost and compliance with the bid specs and that sort of thing. After that is completed, after that meeting on the 10th, and we finalized all the players, we will know at that point who's coming in at what level and how close it is to what Bowen had estimated a year ago. That'll begin to give us a first inkling of, did we under budget? Did we over budget? How are those numbers moving around? Then there is a contract addendum, I guess, which includes the guaranteed maximum price, GMP. After the bids are done, they do a GMP, and they do this with their vendors or their subcontractors. So, then we've got certain numbers. There is, however, in the course of the process, there can be change orders. And what Jason, architect, said, what you do at that point is your building committee sort of goes dormant at that point, or sometimes they just disband it. But you select a couple people who will follow the construction process through the entire construction plan, and the trustees will need to authorize that team to be able to approve change orders up to a certain level. So let me think as an example. Let's say we're putting in, I don't know, I'm trying to think of what would be an example. I haven't been to a project like this.
Like if you run into something that you need more steel beam support or something like
Yes.
that.
That
We will.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have, they've gone through and with structural engineer, but let's say something they thought 20-pound steel was enough, and it turns out it's got to be 40 pound. I have no idea how you measure steel. a good example. Then, and they come back and say, it is going to cost another $15,000 because we need another post. Or we digging the hole for the footing of that post and oops, we came across something else that needs to be dealt with. Unforeseen, nobody's fault, but it's gonna cost more money and it's outside that guaranteed maximum price piece. They don't have to eat that. Then we would have to have approval of that. What I've heard from people, and this was talking to Connor about how they dealt with the town office as well. But Jason suggests we have a team of 3 people. And my recommendation to you is that those 3 people be Liz, myself, because we need to have a trustee involved, and Colin Williams from our building committee. Colin he was actually on the board of trustees back in the 1990s. He was the chair of the board. And then he worked the last, I think, 20 some years of his career at UNH as their facilities construction management team person. So he's very well informed in building projects and construction. So I think he has an expertise
Yeah.
that Liz and I don't have.
Yeah.
But again, and I would say we would want to have at a minimum 2 of the 3 of us sign off on any change. And the only reason I say 2 of the 3 would all try to be involved in it. But if one of us happened to, I don't know, take a vacation and is not here,
What?
or is for some reason unavailable, would want to have at least the other 2 people that would make the decision. And I would say, if 2 people fell away, well, then we need to come back to the board and replenish that committee.
Do we need to approve in the minutes to approve the 3?
Yes, we would need a motion from the board to approve a committee of 3 to be, I called it the construction team, but authorized to approve change orders up to a set dollar amount. Talking to Jason, he says, he's seen it go from a low of 5,000 to a high of 20,000. Things are more expensive than it used to be. I would say we'd want that limit to be between $15,000 to $20,000. Just because it doesn't mean that something won't be changed, but it would mean anything over that limit would need to come back to the full board of trustees.
Over 15.
And so there might be, obviously there'd be special meetings involved because it's not like, oh, well, we'll talk about that 3 weeks from now. You can't shut down the construction for 3 weeks.
Yeah, you don't want it stopping for every change, because there will be changes. It will happen.
Yeah,
Is Colin willing to do it?
yes, he is. Yes, he is. He's very invested in this, which is good to
Yes.
see. Made a couple of donations, even the foundation, nice. And when we had that last meeting, I asked Colin, do we want to have copies of plans? Or do we just want to do it electronically? And he requested copies of the plans, which costs us like $100. And Jason had those made up. And I can see why he would. I mean, it's difficult just looking at a screen and trying to figure out. We had it up on the screen, but there's a lot of detail that is hard to see on an electronic screen. So anyway, he has actually custody of those plans right now, and so he can become familiar with them. So my recommended motion is that the board appoint a, what do we call it, construction team for purposes of monitoring the process and making decisions of Liz as library director, myself, and Colin Williams. And we authorize that team to approve change orders up to
15,000.
15,000?
Yeah.
And just know that if something comes up that's more than that, that means you're gonna get a notice that in 48 hours, we have to have a meeting or maybe even an emergency meeting to approve that. We can't do it via email notice. We have to do it in a public meeting.
Do you think 15 is too low? I mean, I think it's a way of keeping all the trustees involved.
And this committee would need to report to the Board of Trustees every month, both on the progress and then on any change orders. And knowing that change orders are likely going to come out of our contingency line. unless other vendors are come in with bids much less than was anticipated, in which case we've got surplus there to deal with, but I'm okay with 15, but I have no experience on,
15 works. Right.
okay. Do you have a draft of that motion?
Yeah.
You want to read it back?
A motion to authorize a construction team consisting of Liz, Susan, Colin, to approve changed orders up to $15,000. Beyond that, to be approved by the board.
I would add one more clause in that, is that the construction team is monitoring and tracking the progress.
And reporting to
Yeah,
the board.
that, does that need to be in the motion?
No, that doesn't need to be in the motion,
Okay.
but that can be in.
Yeah, I
should be
have that in
reflected
my notes.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
And the contingency fund,
that's a budget line item. That was, you don't need to
I
put
don't
anything further on that. I was just explaining where those funds come from. We approve more than contract.
I'll make the motion.
Not so interested.
Oh, it is interesting, but I feel like I don't know anything. Enough, anyway. It's not
person,
Second that.
Bloomers are leaving tomorrow's at 6:30.
So that motion was made by
Susan,
Susan,
I'm
seconded
seconding.
by
Yeah.
Ezra. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. BPL purchasing policy. We're gonna have to, I put that down because I looked at our purchasing policy and saw we had tried to replicate the town's policy. Since, and I began to look at that and say, gee, we need to go out to sealed bid for furniture, for example, and how Liz explored a number of vendors. We've used Tucker Library Trustees for years.
Local.
They're local, and we just sort of ended up going with them. You know, they came, looked at all the,
Yeah, they have more experience with our shelves than anybody.
what could be reused, what not be reused, and so on. Did we tell you last meeting, I don't know if you had did you have the bids from them?
I had the shelf bids, they still haven't gotten the furniture to me yet, they're still working on that.
So there's two things we need to do. One is, I asked Connor yesterday, if you made changes in your policy, and he said, yes, they have. So I asked him if he would send us, I looked on their website and I emailed him the link I saw and I said, is this the most recent one? It's a couple of years old. He said, no. So he's directed, Amy Doherty, the finance director, to send me a link or a copy of the current policy. Town policy, so we can look at that and replicate it. It just makes sense to do it that way. And then I asked Connor, well, how did you deal with the building here, like furniture? Did you go sealed bids or, how did you deal with some of that? I don't remember what he answered about the furniture, but he said there are some exceptions in the policy. So I said, also, we have phone service systems. That's going to be more. We have the security system. That's way more estimated. We haven't gone through, Liz and I, to deal with that, to trim that back. Those are owner responsibility things. So anything that goes through Bowen is not subject to this purchasing policy. It's part of that, their contract, which we did go out to bid and did that whole process years ago for selecting the architect and the construction manager. But purchasing the security system, the phone system,
Anything we're going
furnishing.
through that the town already has for joining on to their provider, we don't have to.
right, and that's apparently reflected in their policy. But rather than going out to bid for security, we said what's going to make most sense is if we use the same security system that the town is using, and that's all
One source.
one source. It makes more sense that we use the same telephone service vendor that they're using, which is Block 5.
And that's IT as well. Block 5 is phone and IT.
Phone and IT. So rather than doing our own thing, if we are relying on using a system that the town is using, that's good reason to not go out to bid. And they've already done that bidding process and exploration, so it still is a fair process. I do not know that our current policy is really clear
No.
on that. We can also, in our policy, and I think in their policy, we can make exceptions to the bidding process under certain circumstances, or if we feel it is in the best interest of the library. So I think we might need, for example, we might need a vote from the trustees, finally, when we get all the estimates, to go with Tucker Library Interiors without going out for further bids. I think if it's less than 15,000, you don't have to go out and do the sealed bid, but you have to get a minimum of 3 bids. 3 quotes, and that's very reasonable. So, we do not have time to deal with it today. And I don't even have its updated policy, but it's another policy that we need to look at, revise and update ours, and bring it forward for this board to approve. So that's what that's about. Change of owner responsibilities. We've touched on this before. Liz, would you give us a
Telephone, I'm still waiting for Mike Block 5 came out to see us in July. Told me he'd get back to it. Apparently went get his people on it, is what he said. Put it on his desk, forgot about it until I was like, we kind of need that. So they're working on that now. He has already visited, he's already seen what equipment we have, how old it is.
basically it's dump it?
Yeah, he's like, oh, that's out of code and all that. So we're like, well, it's, so he is working on that. He will get that to us prior to the next building committee meeting, which is in October.
But just so you know, these items here are not subject to the building committee review or recommendation. These are purely owner responsibilities, which means purely the trustees make the decisions on these items here.
Yeah, and then security, we did meet with, was it Brad?
Yeah.
Brad from One Source. When did we meet? We met with him a while ago.
August.
In August, he came out, he walked the building with us. He did send me a whole quote. He also sent me like a view of where the cameras are if we have cameras, what parts of the building they're going to be, looking at. And his security system, well, he said they will supply and install a new integrated security system for the location, The bottom line was it all came in with everything that we wanted, came in at $60,000.
We budgeted 15. So
I have the basics, looks like it's going to come in at 24.
and the basics is
And that's,
extra.
and that's without the external.
What is included in basics?
Basics is they will supply the security system, access control systems, CCT. They'll put in the whole system, but we won't necessarily they'll wire it all up.
Okay. What Liz and I, when we toured with them, besides having key card access, so staff would have a key card, it's old-fashioned keys.
Mm-hmm.
That if you remember, the children's side has a handicapped accessible entrance because that's how they would bring in stretchers. And so that would be, staff would park in that back part of the parking lot and come in that way. There'd be obviously the same key entrance to the front door and to the door that exits from the program room. Because remember, we're setting it up so that we could have that program room used after hours and closed off the rest of the library with gates. And those gates will operate by traditional metal keys, not by any key card system. Liz and I looked at having cameras that would show you what's going on at those 3 entrances, and also some internal cameras. So for example, in the program room, people could be using that, but staff would not be there, would not see what's going on. We had some thoughts about other areas in the library that are not necessarily easily visible from the circulation desk, but allow us more supervision, and that those cameras would be viewable on computers.
Yeah.
That's what brought it up to 60,000. So I'm thinking at the minimum, we're not gonna do internal cameras this time around unless we have money left over at the end of the year. I don't know, we don't have cameras here, but I think
Not
it's-
on 125. I just keep saying that. I know, I'm sorry. I just, there's a lot more going on 125. We're sort of out of the world view here, which is nice.
I do think it makes sense to have everything wired so that ultimately we can have that kind of security. I think how much we can afford to do. I mean, my priority is getting those 7-foot stacks replaced with ones that haven't been around UNH for 20 years before they came here. You know, I think we've got to balance out.
Yeah, so the 24,000, it covers like the entire installation, all the wiring, I mean, key cards. We were talking about having a code punch system for the program room. So if somebody was going to be going out after hours, we aren't giving them their own key card. We're giving them a code and saying, this is how you're going to be locking up. Put the
Or
code
somebody asked if they could use the building for a program on Sunday afternoon. No staff would be there. We'll have, this is a whole nother policy thing we're gonna wrestle with in the coming year is meeting room policies. It's gonna be major things for us to think about there. But that would be the advantage of having a key, a punch key system.
Yeah, and they're, monitoring like the fire, having them call the fire station if there's, their alarm is set off or the motion detector calls the police. The monitoring adds up.
Yeah, that we have to have, like we
Yeah.
have in here, it's a motion, is it motion?
Motion detectors, yeah, you have motion detectors and smoke detectors. And
So, this is when we begin to look at these things and say, okay, so instead of, even if we go with a minimum, we budgeted 15, we're at 24. Moving, we budgeted 15. Now that we don't have to move from here, it's only one move. That's probably gonna come in pretty close to the 15, less than 20, I think, anyway. Because the vendor was being generous as far as discounting the cost in order to help us. The phone service, we don't know yet.
That's part of block 5.
Our phone services are a little glitchy even now.
It's old wiring. Yeah, and we're the only department, rec is on the town's phone on block 5. We're still on First Light. I think we're still on the copper wiring. I don't.
So we originally had thought, and Connor had actually suggested that if we could afford it, we actually make the change before we move over there. But the question becomes, if making the change means that we are having to pay for a whole bunch of wiring here in order to get the new phone system, that's not the best use of it.
No.
If we had any excess funds that we could use to buy the hardware now, well, that would save us some money for next year. So we don't know what the cost of the phone service is gonna be. Furniture, I think we mentioned this last time, got a range of costs for replacing the shelving that is old. Much of the shelving we can reuse. I think the YA area,
Yeah,
Yes.
all the lower, even some of the stuff in children's, the pull-out shelves, all the YA sort of stuff, even some of the units. But yeah, if we get rid of the 7-foot shelving, that's
the big item. And we have the stuff that the movies are in.
yes.
That's reusable. We're the first users for that. The children's section is in pretty bad
Yeah, it's
condition. We need to
Yeah.
redo most of that children's section. And that's not talking about chairs and tables. We certainly can reuse the tables we've got, but when you look at that plan, you'll see more seating area, which is what we wanted. And of course, more chairs for the conference room and things like that. So, but the shelving alone, the sort of middle of the road amount to replace those 7-footers and the children's area was like 74,000.
Yes.
Just for the shelving.
Well, because it involves the labor of taking it up and moving it and getting it out and then putting it back down. There's a lot involved in shelving.
I'm not sure we have to pay them to remove the shelving that we're not going to move. That can be the part of the demo when they do this space over. but all the other is take apart, put it back together. So that was, and we put in the budget $40,000 for that. We knew it was going to be more than that, but again, we were cutting things back in order to get the bond amount. Our real hope had been to get the bond amount less than, for the library portion, to get it at just under 3 million. And we were successful in that. The bond was more than that because of the money for rent to renovate this. But the net amount, when you took out the 400,000 plus that the foundation contributed, brought the library portion under. So we knew we were going to have to do that. And then finally, solar energy. As you may recall, we told the public that we wanted to do solar energy for this building, but we were not going to ask the taxpayers to fund it. So we're going to be going to other funding sources for that. That's where we are on all of this. I guess we got through a lot of it without you guys getting to ask a lot of questions and make a lot of comments, but I think those were some of the main topics. I guess, and I do have a foundation update for you, but my question of you is, given what we've shared and what we need to do, separate from the MOU, what we need to do on these owner responsibilities and purchasing policy, do we need to set another meeting between now and the normal trustee meeting, which is when? Does anybody have a calendar?
Next one be end of October, middle of October.
I think it's pretty early in the month, because I think October is early. Starts early.
I think it's like October 15th.
October 15th. The good thing about that time is we will have the GMP. I'd like us to have the GMP, so we'll have more information on money.
Is it meeting the first? Is
Yeah,
there-
We have a meeting set for the first. I'm wondering if we don't have enough information to have that meeting on the first until we get the GMP and Liz gets more information. We need the information from Block 5 for the phone system. The reason I'm laying that out is, as you know, the foundation has been working on grants, primarily on solar. I've been working with the foundation, both going to their meetings and working closely with Roger, who's the chair, and Cindy Hoisington, who is the vice chair of the foundation and is also now the treasurer. And she's also on the energy committee, so she has a real priority for solar. Meanwhile, the staff, and I have to admit, I'm concerned about having enough money to cover shelving and furniture. It's not a big deal if we don't have every single chair in place the day we open, but we've got to have a plan to get there pretty quickly. The foundation had submitted a grant that they finally just got notice of. So the good news is, First Seacoast Bank has notified the foundation that they're going to give the foundation $15,000.
Okay.
They had made that commitment 4 or 5 years ago, but when Roger went back to them to say, okay, now we're ready for the money, they said that offer was good.
Yeah.
It lapsed.
That's great. They're so cool.
And so we were hoping to hear back from them sooner. They said that they would pay it out $5,000 a year over 3 years, starting in 2024. Not a problem. If we need the cash sooner, we'll get a loan from their bank and they'll be collateral for their own loan. So I'm not worried. I just thinking of that as an option, but that's not a problem. We've got 15,000 there. The grant, I worked with Roger in rewriting the grant application to another foundation. I think it's the Samuel Hunt Foundation. We asked them for 25,000. Originally, these grants were written specifically for solar, but that was actually challenging. Another library, Meredith Public Library, was very generous. They had got funding from that source. That library director not only said, gave us some tips, but she sent us their grant applications, both of which were approved. And they applied for 25,000 each. And we looked at theirs, and basically I rewrote the grant application to be, the project is the overall library. The project budget is the total budget for the library and solar and everything. and then how much we have towards that. We have the bond, we have certain other funding. What we're short is $184,000. And that was a guesstimate with furniture because we didn't have. And so basically, if we are successful at getting approval of that $25,000 grant, it can be used for furniture and for solar. We're not locking ourselves in. Another grant application just was submitted to Bangor Savings Bank. And that one was specifically for solar because of the way the grant application process operated. But we'll have, so we're doing those. Another grant suggested that we wait until January because it spent most of their 2024 money. But when possible, unless it's precluded by the grantor, we're going to be doing this more generic project support. So it doesn't lock us in. So that's that $15,000 notice was a big relief.
No,
At least
I felt like they would too.
I was hopeful, but if you look at their website, they have their grant making section. They basically say, we'll get back to you on this. So they're not publishing it. So we didn't know what that really meant for them. But anyway, that's a very good sign. And of course, they've been generous to us over the years supporting the summer reading program.
Yes.
I'm hopeful that the Friends of the Library, who has been doing pretty well financially, will, they're beginning to talk about funding either a section of the library or another significant, they already donated 25,000, but they're discussing another significant contribution. And
Something we have talked about for years and years and years. When people ask why we save money, it was always if we have a new library, we want to furnish it, we want
to do something for him. So I don't see the Friends saying, yes, sign me up to give money for solar, but the internal. And of course, we have money that we have been saving up. And, I do think that as trustees, we need to be thinking about what do we need to be prepared to kick in, cover some of these expenses. And it would be another topic that we'd talk about in the next couple of months. Jason just reminded us at the building committee that if you want to buy any furniture, not to mention also the show, you've got to be ready to order that by February, did he say? March at the latest, because it can take easily 3 months to get that in. And we're looking at moving, the building being ready to move in sometime between the middle of June, I think, and the middle of July.
I'm putting a new roof on the building.
Yes, they're doing the roof.
I think that if they're gonna put a new roof on, we should talk about putting the fixtures to hold the beforehand.
Yeah,
So it can be done at the time of the roof and it will be done properly rather than people tramping all over the roof.
What they're doing with respect to the roof, and this is part of both the structural engineering there, as well as Jack Bingham, who's the solar vendor who's making a substantial contribution to that project, is they all met there and all the construction work they're doing, including the roofing, is going to be solar ready. So they needed to know the weight of all that stuff. Jack's been providing all the information needed. And then they asked about the electrical, what needs to happen in electrical. That would be set up so that whatever electrical we have is ready to take solar. So that is all being incorporated in the plan. So anyway, that's the update on both solar energy and the foundation funding. The other thing the foundation has done is they applied to I think it's the New Hampshire Lottery Commission, which is in charge of charitable giving. And so the foundation went ahead and did the application process. They've been approved. And Cindy Poisington is the lead person on that. She's contacted the gaming people. It turns out that you have, they will get a percent, like 10 days a year, they get a share of the proceeds. And if you have to be connected to a gaming site, whatever they call them, casino, that is in the same district that you are in, executive council district. That could be anywhere in the state, it has to be. So, she has pursued that, and it may be sometime in the next year. Slim possibility it could start by the end of this calendar year. Apparently, they're putting a casino up in Ossipee or someplace up there that, North Conway, I can't remember what town exactly.
No one going in Dover.
Pardon?
There's no one going over in Dover.
Yeah, there is one in Dover, it's been in operation, but they each have a dance card, I'm gonna say. The dance card on some of those are full, the ones that have been around. There's one that is being developed in Rochester. Pardon?
All area.
Lilac Mall area. And then there's the Swan North. So anyway, I don't know all the specifics, but Cindy has moved that along. And what a couple of us went to the NHLTA conference for the Newberry Library, did that. They were involved with one up in Lebanon. They get 10 days each. She said it's the easiest money they've made. The casino used to be able to charge the charities a rental fee, like as if they were renting the space. The state senate passed a bill this past year that prevents the casinos from doing that. So what you get as a share is pure money. And I'm looking at Susan, you went to that workshop too, didn't you?
Right.
I think it was like 7,000 was a 5-day period, and then 13,000 was another. So they, as a small library, were getting like 20,000 a year from it. So if we have anywhere near that success, and the foundation continues to function, we'll have an ongoing source of revenue for major expenses.
I need to encourage people to gamble.
Yeah.
They're not gonna get any money from me.
Countering soon.
Well, I'm not a person who loves gambling. I don't even necessarily think it's great for the state, honestly. However, to say we're gonna stand on a principle and not get involved in gambling only means that other charities get the money and we sit here without money. So it is what it is. It's not the library doing it, obviously, it's the foundation. But I think it's really a handy source of future revenue. We'll see how it goes. So that's the foundation update. Friends.
So friends, so the Mumsdale made more than we expected because Wentworth made an error and gave us too many of one color. They didn't want that color back, and they still brought the ones that they had. They were supposed to bring some pink, purple, and they brought too many more orange or whatever. So we had to sell those, so we made more money. People bought them all. People bought them all for we $5 each, and
Oh,
people,
what a deal.
so we made $1,071. That's a profit. So it's great.
And their next big fundraiser is gonna be a huge book sale at the Pole
Yeah.
in November.
90 boxes of books. John Picasso has it. It's house. There's more here at the library. That's what he said.
So it's gonna be an excellent sale. So he's hoping that brings in like another 15.
I think he said they have many tables that donate those books.
So anyway, that's good news for the friends.
And we'll also be doing a raffle
Oh,
this
really?
year again. Yeah.
Oh,
Yep. That's proud. And we'll be at voting and then at the craft fair. Yes.
huh. Well, how about that? Friends stuff. So anyway, that's the friends report. Is what comes after that on your agenda?
Custodial service.
Oh,
Custodial service contract.
Custodial services contract. That's old business,
This
Liz.
is all business. Wasn't pushing for it, but at this point in time, we've been running without a custodian most of September.
Did you say, please?
We've had no custodial services for the bulk of September.
I read that.
So, the,
Connor seemed to say, if you guys want to sign it, but I don't know where that puts us.
the dilemma we had was the indemnification clause. So, the vendor felt it was it put too much on them, too much risk on them. Our attorney, of course, the town's attorney and IMAX always wanted to be all the responsibility of the other party, and usually you try to meet someplace in the middle. We had asked, it's called Citywide, we had asked that company, look at some other contract that you're comfortable with and give us this alternate language. he either couldn't find another contract or everybody signed what they had.
Yeah, they must have.
So I guess I need to take another look at that, so we can move our custodial over to citywide. We may make a change in the future because the town is taking the approach of they want to, custodial contract as well. They have people on staff for routine cleaning, but they want to use a custodial service for periodic, I don't know if it's deep cleaning or major projects. And they being the select board has decided whoever the school department decides to use for that service, the town will use. But they don't have to go out to bid themselves and all that sort of stuff. I don't know, we may ultimately change over to that service, although we need routine. Liz and I felt at least 3 times a week, a good cleaning of everything. And that's what they're looking.
No.
So it may or may not be a fit for us to go with the town on that one. But I will work with Liz on that clause. Nobody here is a lawyer. Yeah. Anybody have a lawyer friend?
My son-in-law is a lawyer.
Who?
My son-in-law. You
That
probably.
you live next door to? Okay. Would you be able to entice your son-in-law to help us by looking at the various languages we have and
What's the time on
well,
Immediate, but
as soon as we can, yeah.
It's one clause,
It's
right?
just one clause.
it? That should be.
Yeah. And he may not be expert, he may not feel that he, has the right knowledge for that, if he's a tax attorney or something, but if he could help us, that'd be very helpful. And what we can do is Liz can give you a copy of the
Yes.
contract, circle that, and circle what the attorneys on our side didn't want to,
I have a very, very good source for that. Be better than an attorney.
Okay,
But the problem is, we just lost her husband yesterday. So I'm reluctant to call her and
yeah,
for a couple of weeks. So
yeah.
would we have a couple of weeks?
yeah, I mean, the way things are going, we're just figuring,
Indemnity.
Yeah, I mean, even if this person stays on, I can't let him
The only other
go.
person I can think of, Vicki Roundy, who used to be on the Library Trustees. I think she's retired, semi-retired. But I could try to reach out to her, because she was the library trustee and a select board member as well for.
Who is that?
She was Vicki Roundy.
Oh.
See the tables out there, courtesy of Vicki Roundy Law School. But, if you think your son-in-law could take a look at that.
Yeah.
Your quick read. I remember that Citywide gave us an example of the way they felt our attorney, the town's attorney had written it, or Primex. If the roof fell in on one of their people because it a structural problem, they were the ones that were on the hook for it, as opposed to it ought to be property and liability, because if it's our problem, if their person got up on a ladder to clean a corner and fell off the ladder, and they provided, if the ladder was faulty and was ours and broken, well, that seems to me it's a town thing. If they brought in the ladder and then they fell off the ladder, that's their problem. So
The indemnity clause is always the big man.
Yeah.
Every
yeah.
time.
So
I mean,
we would like to get that to a point where we're comfortable with it.
Mhm.
And then we would still need the authorization of this board to sign that contract, to enter into that contract. So I guess, and if we want to move quickly, would say, is the board willing to authorize entering into a contract pending a satisfactory revision of the indemnification clause, mutually acceptable?
Well,
Of course, you haven't seen the indemnification
Right,
clause.
exactly. Right, we haven't seen anything and it's, who's gonna review it? Your son-in-law reviews it, comes back with comments, then you're gonna review it, the two of you gonna review it, how this,
And then go back to them and say, is this enough? And
I
then,
mean, I feel comfortable that you, your son-in-law, you two, work together to come up with something that's reasonable, and not have to bring it back to the court. See, I
I think a motion. You want to try to frame a motion?
Okay. I make the motion that Richard, Susan, and Liz, in conjunction with Richard's son-in-law, review and come up with an appropriate indemnity clause for the custodial contract.
What she said.
A second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? But weren't that we, I mean, I don't want to have special board meetings every other week, but these are tough things getting through. And it's unfortunate that our custodian, who's been with us a number of years, but has had a number of issues.
Yes,
Liz, do you need to go into non-public? You had talked about.
yeah, I kind of do.
It's on reputation.
Yes, it is.
So, at this point, we would take a vote to go into non-public session. You all set for a non-public?
Okay, and so
And then you wouldn't have it this morning.
well, it's very nice meeting you.
And then, yes, so, do you think you're gonna be interested in, or do you want to put it separately and talk more library stuff, although I know you're not Carolina.
Well, every time she sees me on the street. Yes, for the alternative.
Alternate.
The alternative, yeah,
Okay.
that would be great.
There is, and I can, or Carolina can send you, I'll send you the link. There, in order to be considered for an alternate position, and what we might want to have you do is come back to next month's meeting.
Okay,
But there's a form for the select board that you have to fill out, a volunteer form, volunteering to be for an appointment or seeking an appointment. We can send you the link to that so you can look it through and begin to fill it out. And then that would be sent to the select board. At one of their meetings, it would be announced, they get a copy of the form, and then they make the actual appointment. At the next one. And the appointments are annual, they run until from March to March, or whatever point you're appointed, like if you'd be appointed, let's say in October, for a term that would end in March. In March, you would get reappointed. By the select board.
well, thank you.
Anyway, thank you for saying. You're welcome.
And that form is really simple. I
Oh,
don't say that, so.
Well, as a teacher, you volunteer for everything, so.
Thanks.
With that, is there a motion to go into non-public?
On a motion to go to non-public.
I'll second.